Hey guys, we just shot a class on Facebook Live on how to make this really cool stamped wire wrap ring.
So this is a project from a book that I co-wrote with Taryn McCabe, her sister. And it's pretty quick and easy and fun. And in the class, we show you how to shape the blank and how to do the wire wrap band. It's pretty cool. So remember, this was shot live, so we've just archived it here for you to enjoy. And if you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment, we'll answer it. Maybe give us a thumbs up, maybe hit that subscribe. I don't know, get crazy. Let's check out the ring. So it's a stamped circle. It has then been shaped. I still got a little tape on the back of that one. I taped it down when I stamped it. And then sterling wire for the remainder of the band. So I have all these guys. Look at this flower, isn't it cute?
Yes, Amy was saying she loves the flower.
It looks so good. I work in sterling and sometimes copper and brass, but I'm a sterling girl. So all of the silver ones that you see here are sterling. And I use 24 gauge because it's a lot easier to shape. And this isn't a piece that I necessarily needed like a really thick blank for. Does that make sense?
How thick do you usually use? 24 gauge?
Yeah, you could use thicker, but as you use thicker, and this goes for if you want to use aluminum because we only sell it in 18 gauge or thicker, it might become a little bit tougher to shape because it's thicker. In which case, with sterling, if you wanted to do thicker, you may have to anneal it. Or if you do a lot of stamping and it makes it really hard, you may have to anneal it before shaping it.
That makes sense.
So to make this ring, you start with any shape. Let's say it's a flower. Stamp it up, get crazy. We're not going to do stamping. You know how to stamp. And then I poke holes on either side, kind of directly across from each other, remembering that this is how it will orient on your finger. So don't do the holes that way if you have something that like faces a certain way, like these flowers do, or like this L. You know, see where I've put the holes. I don't want the holes there, otherwise the L will face the wrong way.
What size hole do you usually punch?
Well, this one I used a 1.8 millimeter. In the book, I think I recommend a little bigger than that. Because you're going to be limited to how many wraps you can get in the hole, depending on the size gauge wire that you use and how many wraps you do, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But on all the rest of them, I use the 3/32 punch with the power punch plier.
Oh, cool.
Which is the smallest one that comes with it. I'm not counting our 2 extra bits that we sell separately. So that guy, this is actually one from the book, as is this one. Those are 3/32 holes. This one is 1.8, and I use the these guys, punch plier, as we talked about a couple weeks ago.
Can you use almost any size blank, or is there a point where the blank is too big?
I feel like an inch is almost too big. This one, bigger, I think is too big, and here's why. When it goes on your finger, that doesn't fit this finger because I made it to fit this finger. When it goes on your finger, any bigger than this, you have to curl it perfectly around so it's super round and sits on the side of your fingers, and it gets a little weird. Like maybe you can't get the shape perfect. It's going to be really pokey there.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
So I'd either go smaller than an inch or like maybe way bigger so it wraps.
That makes sense, yeah.
An oval or something. I've never tried an oval. In the book, I recommend I think it's a 3/4, but I really enjoyed, when I made some yesterday, this little size here, which I think is a 19 millimeter.
Oh, I like that one. Yeah, it's cute. I love the flower too.
Yeah, you can use really any of them. So here is the piece that I'm going to shape. I have stamped it, I've added black to the impressions, and I've punched my holes. And I shape after I punch my holes. It doesn't really tweak the shape of the holes, so it's not a big deal. Now, the best trick for this is these ring bending pliers. Do you see the jaw of the pliers? It's like a really drastic smile, as opposed to the bracelet bending pliers, which is a little bit less of a smile. It's a little grumpier. And you're going to place your piece in the jaw and start to round it. Now, your other option is to work on a mandrel and work with a hammer or your hands, depending how soft it is, to get it to take on this rounded shape. But that's a little more difficult, and if you're doing that, you probably will have to anneal. And annealing, if you're new to this, is just softening the metal. We've got videos on it on our site. Just search annealing and they will pop up.
And it's not as frightening as it sounds at all.
No, it's not. All right, so I'm going to place this in the jaw of the plier like this because I want the design to face up in the groove there. You can kind of start anywhere as long as you're only working this way and not like at a weird angle, but with the holes on either side. So it's hard to show on camera.
Wow, though, it's pretty easy to do it. That's not an annealed blank, correct?
Right, and it's been stamped.
That's cool, which makes it harder.
Yep. So then I just come around and I've got it the best I can at this point. To focus working on that.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think that ring bending plier is the way to go. I mean, as far as making it a whole lot faster.
Yeah, it's so much easier. I use these a ton. You could also try like wrap and taps or something, but you will be limited on the size blank for those. So that's good enough. It's going to sit nice and rounded on my finger. So in the book, I recommend 22 gauge, but I've discovered that I actually like 24 gauge better for this. Either one works for sure. It's a little easier with 24 gauge. This one's 24 gauge. This one's 22 gauge. And it does build a little bit of a bulkier band.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this one I probably could distort. But for your first time wrapping this and getting it through the holes and all that, you might want to start with a thinner wire. This one's 22 gauge. In fact, if you're doing this for the first time, I'd start with copper wire.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I do feel like 24 gauge works for so many projects too, that it tends to be the wire that more people probably have at home.
Yeah, that's a good point. And my hands are all slippery because I just put on lotion, which was stupid. But I am going to start with about a foot of 24 gauge. That might be too much, but you want to have more than less, right?
Mm-hmm.
More than less. That was really deep. Okay, I just want to get situated here. I'm going to pull this in, not because I necessarily need it, but it like anchors really well if I need somewhere to work on. Where'd my guy go? Okay, here. So you're going to place your blank on the ring mandrel where you want, what size you want. Mm-hmm. So first of all, I'm going to start by going down through one of the holes and leaving about a 2 or 3 inch tail there. This is going to be what I wrap with, and then make like a nice tight kink right there. So that's going to be your starting point. And keep the tail off on the side. Don't let it go between the wraps once you start. So I'm going to find on my mandrel, which is so old that I've almost worked off the sizes. Let's make a size 7. So I'll zoom in. Can you see the little 7 on there?
Mm-hmm, you can.
So I'm going to try to hold it there throughout the work. Even if I take it off to wrap, I definitely want to put it back on to make sure that I stay at the size 7. If you are working with 24 gauge, you only do 3 or 5 wraps, I feel like it's really easy to keep on your size. But when I make it with 22 gauge, it came out a little bit smaller. And I think that's because once you get the wraps here, it bulks it up a little.
That makes sense.
So if I wanted this to be a size 7, and I was working with 22 gauge, I might hold it at like a 7 1/4.
That makes sense.
Then it was done, it will come around and be a 7. So your first wrap is going to come around the back.
See, I would have just skipped dessert and then see if the ring fit afterward. Or make sure I definitely didn't
go.
eat Chinese food. Nothing with salt.
Nothing with salt. No sushi. Come around the back, and then I'm going to go up through this hole right here. But I like to come all the way around to like just tell the wire, look, I'm going to manipulate you now, but this is where you're going to be. So stay with me. Here, I got to get back. Sorry, I don't have my close glasses on. I got to look. Okay, there we go. All right. So I'm going to put the wire up through the hole. And if you need to, form like a little kink right there.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll go through the hole. There we go. And I'm going to pull it through. I'm going to hold it with my pliers because my fingers are really slippery. But I will warn you that, see this loop that's coming around? That will turn into a kink. So you have to catch it on its way and unturn it. And luckily, since I'm using 24 gauge, it's this you know, it's thin like string, so I can really just pull very hard. Now let me make sure I'm still on the 7. There we go. Okay. So right here, I'm just going to grab the tip of the wire. I don't know if I'm off frame, but you can see I'm holding this and give it a nice tight pull, and then just go right back around the other side. Okay. Let me try to get a close-up for you guys. Any questions so far?
No, people are saying that the pliers seem to be a key with this.
Yeah.
It's smart to do that. Is there any way to do this without the mandrel, or you really do need the mandrel? I mean...
You could do it around like a pen, but if you want to be very precise on the sizing, you need the mandrel.
Okay, that makes sense.
But you could do it around, you know, anything really.
And I suppose whatever your own ring, like if you're making it for yourself, if as long as you measure your own ring from your hand on something, then you use whatever that is.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so now I'm over on this side, and I'm going to come up through again. Feeding it through, pulling it through. That kink is going to get real ugly, so I'm going to boss it around. Now, you'll notice when I grabbed the wire, I almost did it and I stopped myself to pull. Don't grab here, because you could kink up your wire or make little nicks in it. So I'm happy to thrash the tail.
Oh, I think I would have been inclined to pull there too. I guess that advocates using your hands if you're that type of person.
Yeah,
who's
totally.
gonna pull it with
or
the plier.
hold it with nylon jaw pliers where you can't hurt it.
Oh, okay.
So this is where I originally started, and I'm again keeping that tail off to the side. I'm just going to do 3 wraps on this one. So I'm going to come back around to this side, and on this last wrap, because I think it looks better when you actually do the end wrap, I'm going to go down through the hole rather than up.
Oh,
because when the tail comes from the back, it does a prettier wrap. I'll try to show you what I mean by showing you one where it didn't come through the back. Now that went in there pretty easily, but if you can't get it in there because now you're starting to jam up the hole, you can take it off the mandrel a little bit, get it into where it needs to go,
and then screw it back down.
Slide it right back down. Otherwise, this next wrap will be too small, right?
So this is definitely a reason not to do like a 1.25 hole, like to make sure your hole is big enough.
Yeah. Oh, remember I just said I wanted to go from the top down?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I caught myself. And this is dead soft wire, as you can probably tell, and you want it to be dead soft. That was not pretty what I just did. I needed to pull down way tighter. There we go. So yeah, it's thin and you can pull on it like string, but only to some degree, right? So make sure that you're getting everything nice and tight. Okay, so at this point I checked to make sure I'm still on the 7, which I am. You can even take it off and flip it over because it is tapered, so if you're worried about that, I'm a little higher than the 7. That's okay. Okay, you guys see that? It's really hard to do this with hot lights on your head.
Oh yeah, if you guys saw her too with the camera, the way that she's kind of
under my nose.
Yeah, it's really difficult.
But I'm getting it. Okay. See how we're doing? You can do more wraps for sure. It looks really cool and bulkier, but it's just a little bit more difficult. So let's just do 3 for now. And I've got both of my tails coming out from underneath. So I'm going to wrap them right here, like you can see on this guy, to end this. Now wrapping them sometimes is a little difficult on the mandrel. So again, if you had to pull it off to do a wrap, put it right back on because you can easily distort it at that point. But I'm going to start by taking my tail and pulling it over this way, nice and tight, and then under to get that first wrap.
Oh gosh, see, I didn't know that you wrapped on the mandrel.
Well, I actually do have to take it off.
Oh, you got to pull down a little bit, can you?
Yeah, thanks.
There we go, perfect.
Okay, so here comes my first wrap. Can't see, I can't even grab the wire.
This actually kind of
come
reminds
right
me.
back on the mandrel because I want to make sure that everybody is staying put. Sorry, what were you saying?
No, it reminds me of kind of when you're hiding your crochet tail too. When you're kind of wrapping it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I want to keep these coils next to each other just because I think it looks real pretty. I'm going to come up a little bit so I can get underneath for one more wrap. Watching to make sure when I pull it through, I'm not kinking it.
Seems like once you get the first wrap done, the second's a little easier.
It is, yeah, and you can pull it together like this if your coils are not behaving. I'm going to leave it like this. I'm going to deal with the back once I do the other side. Okay, so now on this one, same thing. Come around, I'm going to come up so I can get it underneath. I'm actually just going to pull it all the way off because this is too difficult with this in front
With
of
the
my
camera,
face.
yeah.
So I'm going to feed the wire through. Get that. Now, if you were working with half-hard wire, you wouldn't really be able to do this. Feed it through. Am I still in frame here?
You're good. Yep.
Got a little off to the side. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to keep a close-up. Okay. And I'm pulling nice and tight as I do this because tight wraps are important, mostly in my opinion, for aesthetics. See that? Come in.
Out of curiosity, if you decided to wrap more, like if people want, is that going to make the ring a lot smaller?
Oh, I love that idea. I think that'd be really cool to have like a big coil.
It could be pretty, right? Like if you had like 10 wraps on each side.
It'll fill it, and you have to think of it this way. So when working with rings, you're working with the inner diameter and circumference. And if you have a wire that's a 0.5 millimeter thick, and you're going to wrap it in there, it's going to add a 0.5 millimeter on this side and on this side, so basically a millimeter. And it will definitely change the size. I have no recipe, and it would be pretty difficult to figure out exactly.
Sure.
You know?
Might be something fun for someone to play with, though.
Yeah, totally. So you notice on that last wrap, I bring it underneath, and then I push it back a little bit so I can trim it. But again, it's like muscle memory for the wire. It's telling it where I want it to go. And I'm going to come in with just the tip of my cutters and cut right there, and I'm going to deal with that tail in a minute. And then over here. Now, being off the mandrel, I'm not really changing the size or anything if these get tweaked, because I can't pull them at this point. But I'm going to put it back on the mandrel to make sure that they're good.
And to make sure it's all kind of shaped nicely.
Yes.
Also, is it, I mean, I'm sure it would make it bigger, but do people ever hammer it on the mandrel to make it a little fatter?
We're going to do that just with the nylon mallet. Okay, so this last little tail, you see it sticking right there? I'm going to come in with my chain nose and I'm going to burnish it down, which means I'm just going to squeeze it and pinch it down because that could get awfully scratchy. Okay, and then on this side too. And as I do it, I'm kind of turning. So I'm kind of squeezing it down and having it continue to coil. That makes sense? All right, let's zoom out a little bit.
I can't believe how fast you did that.
Thanks. It's a pretty quick ring. Okay, there's my 7. And you got to kind of push it down because it's kind of tweaked at this point. And then I flip it over and I'm just squeezing it and I'm kind of pushing the mandrel this way. I am still on my 7, maybe a teeny bit smaller. Now, if you're worried about these wires not being hard enough, you can come in with your plastic mallet and really set them to shape. I don't know that I would hit it with another hammer because this is already pretty thin wire, and the thinner you make it, it might get too weak. If you needed to try to shape this a little bit more, you could a little bit, but I wouldn't hit too hard on those wraps.
You kind of smush them too much, huh?
Yeah. So see the shape now?
It looks great. Karen had asked what gauge wire was used. She used 24 gauge on this one. Oh, and Ramona chimed in too, but Lisa had said you could also use 22 if you'd like.
Now I'm seeing this little tail. I don't know why I didn't see that earlier.
Yeah.
That's not cool, man.
But it's kind of good that came up because that probably
so now I'm
happens.
going to come in and cut a little more of it
You
off.
guys, I can't emphasize enough that when you see something like that happen, make sure you're wearing some goggles or glasses.
I can't even see right now.
Because I've had those little, the tiny little tail that I've cut like fly up onto my face before.
Yep, please do. There, now that guy is dealt with. And I'm running my finger here to make sure it's not scratchy. And that one's good too. I made a pretty ring.
Oh, I love it.
Cute. So let's take a look at all the parts of it. Let's see if I can get in and zoom without it going blurry.
It looks great.
Here's a wrap, and I like those coils close together. Again, if they weren't, you can grab them on either side and go schmook.
They look great, though.
You could do 5 wraps if you wanted, which I think is better.
More wraps is better?
Yeah. I mean, I think it looks a little better.
I think it looks great like that, but I would be curious to even do like 10 and just see how it looks.
I mean, if I squeezed really hard, I could squish this a little bit and distort it. But for the purposes, I mean, it doesn't bother me because it'll be fine when I wear it. And for the purposes of a demo.
Wow, that looks really pretty.